May I begin? Ladies and gentlemen, it is predicted that petroleum will run out in the next 40 years. Now we need a reliable energy source. We will use up all the petroleum in mere 40 years, and what the side proposition offer us to do? They make us end all the nuclear reactors and nuclear generators, which are one of the most efficient, environmentally friendly, and the cheapest method of having alternative energy source. And we, on the side opposition, simply cannot see this stance. Now, under the value of safe and sustainable energy source, Team Opposition gives you 3 clear substantive points. Number 1, necessity. Number 2, sustainability. And number 3, dependency. As the leader of opposition, I'll be talking about the first 2 substantive points, while my deputy here will be talking about the third. But before we move on to our own case, let us examine what Team Opposition has provided for us. To what they've said, we have mainly 3 contention. Our first contention is, now they failed to define correctly the motion of this debate. They defined nuclear age as nuclear power and nuclear bombs, but the motion actually read that this House believes that the age of nuclear energy must be ended. And they failed to take into account that there was the word energy in it. But ladies and gentlemen, we won't make a definition challenge because we believe that our side is strong enough to still win without this point. Our next contention is about the first substantive point, which is about the dangers of nuclear power. First of all, they said that there is a great danger in the radioactive waste. But ladies and gentlemen, technological improvements are happening every single day. Science is making nuclear reactors safer for use every single day, and we believe that their harms that they provided us simply doesn't stand in the status quo. No, thank you, sir. Nextly, they talk about how nuclear energy is not environmentally friendly. This is factually untrue, ladies and gentlemen. Now, in the production of a nuclear power and nuclear energy, there is no carbon emission, which is the major cause of greenhouse effect. And we see that nuclear power is actually one of the most environmentally friendly methods of providing energy sources. No, thank you, sir. Because other than oil or coals. Nextly, they're trying to say that the consequences of accident, they told us about the examples of Japan and Chernobyl, but let us tell you how those 2 examples are irrelevant to the current time. First of all, Japan, it wasn't a nuclear reactor fault, it was a natural disaster that caused it. Now, experts actually warned against building nuclear reactors in Japan in the first place because they said that Japan was located in a region that was unstable and nuclear reactors shouldn't be built anyways. Now, Japanese scientists didn't take the heat of this notice, and they're the ones who built the nuclear reactors. And we see that in this case, it was a fault of a natural disaster, not a fundamental fault of nuclear energy, and this shouldn't be taken into account. Their next example was about Chernobyl, but ladies and gentlemen, this was a mistake. An accident, an anomaly that rarely ever happens. Firstly, because after the Chernobyl incident, the scientists have actually changed the method of producing nuclear reactors. They are now using a light water method, which makes the process of generating nuclear energy much slower and thereby much safer, ladies and gentlemen. And now in the current age, the accidents such as the Chernobyl incident is very unlikely to happen, and that's what side opposition wants to tell you. Nextly, they talk about the costs of making nuclear reactors. But ladies and gentlemen, we see that this is another factual error because we see that nuclear energy is one of the energy sources that could be produced most cheaply. And countries such as South Korea could afford to use them better than the oil refineries and the coals because they cost very little. For example, it's only 39 won per kilowatt per hour. And we see that this price is considerably less than the price of using electricity fueled by oil or coal. Our third contention is about their second substantive point, which is about heightening geopolitical transition. Well, first of all, there is a flaw here because they make it sound like nuclear plants equals nuclear bomb makers. That's not true. The transitions between plants that produce energy and reactors that produce bombs is very different, and these 2 things shouldn't be linked together, especially since Team Opposition didn't provide a clear standard. And also, we see that nuclear bombs are rarely used in the status quo, and their point on geopolitical transitions doesn't last. Now that I've rebutted to all the points made by Team Opposition, I'd like to move on to our first substantive point, which is about the necessity of nuclear energy. Ladies and gentlemen, I've told you in our context, petroleum will run out in the next 40 years. South Africa is having an electrical crisis, and even China had energy shortages from 2005 to 2008. Now, how can we solve these problems of nuclear crisis? Of energy crisis? Well, we do that by continuing to have nuclear energy and not ending the age of it. Ladies and gentlemen, the current trend of the world is more nuclear energy to provide electricity. For example, in France, 80% of the electricity is provided using nuclear energy. Now, what happens under Team Opposition stance? They suddenly cut off all the sources for France's energy. And what happens? There will be national chaos and national pandemonium. And all the doing a cost and effect analysis, we see that their harms simply cannot outweigh the benefits. Because most countries nowadays need energy and need nuclear energy in order to properly function their nation, and taking away will cause only national panic, and we see that their point doesn't stand here. Because why is nuclear power so necessity? One truckload of uranium can fuel New York City for 1 year. It's the most efficient energy source that we have right now, so why must we end it? We can't see the logical linkage between Team Opposition's arguments. My second argument is about sustainability, and we see that unlike what the opposition tried to argue to us, nuclear energy is actually a very reliable and sustainable form of energy. Now, I divided my argument into two subpoints. My first subpoint is about reliability. Now, ladies and gentlemen, one of the main benefits of nuclear power is that it's an extremely reliable source of power, because most nuclear reactors have a life cycle of 40 years, which can be easily extended further for 20 more years. So that's 60 years of energy with one nuclear reactor, which is very, very sustainable. Now, the source of nuclear power is uranium, and this is available in abundance in the crust of the Earth, with major deposits being uncovered in Canada and Australia. Therefore, since the source of nuclear power is readily available now, and also for centuries to come, the form of power is virtually inexhaustible. And also, to talk about our second level of knowledge is efficiency. We've told you before that one truck of uranium, it produces as much as energy as 1,000 trucks of coal. Just one uranium fuel pellet, roughly the size of a tip of an adult's little finger, contains the same amount of energy as 17,000 cubic feet of natural gas, 1,780 pounds of coal, or 148.9 gallons of oil. And when we see that we have such an efficient, sustainable, cheap, and environmentally friendly method, such as nuclear energy, we simply cannot take that from the world, especially when most countries such as France and the Netherlands depend on it. So if you really stand for sustainable energy and a safe source by which we can have environmentally friendly fuel, you stand for side opposition, and we're very proud to oppose. Thank you.